Well, hello and welcome. I'm starting a little early today. I hope that's not a big deal. Um, I for no other reason that I'm here, and everything's ready this time, so that's really nice. Thank you very much for coming by. Today we're going to talk about. Well, let's go and take a look about this Tudor roof and this bridge. Oh, I got to stop this banner. Sorry about that. Um, so this banner, the banner, this the Tudor roof. That's what I was trying to talk about. And building this thing up into a gaming diorama has been really fun to try to figure out. And so that's what this is all going to be about. I want to talk to you about building a diorama, and I'm going to move the camera here a little bit so you can see it's right behind me here. And it's a massive diorama. This is just like the base. It's all made out of pink foam. And then above, I've been working on this Tudor building. And it's different than a lot of the Tudor buildings maybe you've seen for gaming, where they're made out of, it's like made out of board, like foam board, where it's got the paper on both sides. And then maybe they'll stick like some textured balsa or something, which frankly looks brilliant, and I love it. But I wanted something that I could build, and because I've been thinking about building this for a long, long time. This is based on my favorite books, and it's just really exciting for me. So I really want to kind of build it as real as I could in a scale form, I guess. Oh, and hello. I just want to say hi to a couple friends. Scott's here. Hello, Scott. Thanks very much for coming on. It's really, really fun. Martin is here. Hello from Holland, Martin. It's wonderful for you to be here. First Last, hello. How are you? Watching the progress on the shirts has been great. Very exciting stuff. Thank you so much, First Last. I really appreciate it. John's here. Hello, John. Happy Friday. Thanks very much for coming on, everybody. It's really great to see you, and I'm really happy that you're on board, because today is going to be pretty fun. I tried to structure how I'm going to talk about this a little bit more so that I'm not just flying through my slides. I mean, I don't want you to just look at a bunch of slides. I want to talk about the context in which I created these little different elements for the diorama, because there's just a lot of stuff to consider when you're building a gaming diorama. Each of these levels I want to be accessible, number one, for a dungeon master, the DM that's trying to come up with their campaign, how they want to play it. And to do that, I want each of these layers and levels to be removed. Now, currently, just the buildings, there's 6 levels. And we're going to go into that. I'm going to talk to you about why there's 6 levels, for criminy sakes. And it's given the dungeon master for the D&D game, or Warhammer, or whatever kind of tabletop game that you would play on this. For me, it's based in Midemia, Krondor, my favorite author's world that he created in the 80s, which is based in D&D. Go figure. And so I'm using that as the basis for my story. And I absolutely love these stories. I love this author. And we're going to talk about him a little bit, because it's influencing everything that I do in here. And I think that's really important, because when you have a story that can guide you through building your diorama, it really allows you to kind of make it appropriate for the characters that are in the diorama, or will be in the diorama, for having other stories using elements that are like really element. And I'm going to talk about this, like running on the rooftops, running on the edges of the roof, opening windows. All of these things I see as options for a dungeon master to make a game more engaging and more exciting for the players. To have a physical place to be able to play the game is really what I want. I've seen some wonderful things that you can do with, it's like a screen flat to play your D&D game on, or just a map. But I think it's really exciting to be able to have like this little world that you can play within. So we're going to talk about all that. I would love to say hello to more folks that have just come in. Dominic, Koku, thank you very much for coming back. You were here last week, and I really appreciate that, from the UK. Eric is here. Hello, Eric. Thanks very much. And thank God it's Friday. Thank you very much. I appreciate it, and everybody else too. Link Scale Models. Hello, Link. Hello, everyone. Another day of learning. Thanks so much, Link. Now, if anybody's not aware, Link has been a long time friend and watcher of the show and the channel and stuff like that. And Link now has his own channel on YouTube where he's putting up some pictures of his builds, and he's working on Chevelle right now and El Camino. I love El Caminos just because, I'm a 70s kid. El Caminos were just super cool growing up. And so he's working on some cars. So take a look at Link's Scale Models on YouTube. That would be really fun. Oh, I'm sorry, Dominique. You're from the Netherlands. I'm so sorry. I saw the Jag there, but I didn't see the map. I'm very sorry about that. Well, thank you very much for coming in. I really, really do appreciate it. So let's go ahead and continue talking about this quest I have to go ahead and build a really fun and engaging diorama that can be taken apart and played in. So that's what we're talking about today. Not just the building, but also what goes behind that. So I'm going to go over here and we're going to go through some of these, because when you're building for gaming, it really is something that you have to, oops, I got John back in there for some reason. I got to get my stuff figured out here. There we go. There are some real considerations here when I'm trying to build for the game. And that means that I'm not just kind of building the structure for looks. I'm building it for functionality. So this is kind of a snapshot of where I'm at right now. So I took that this morning, and on the left is just a little bit different angle, but you see the larger building on the left-hand side. That's Barrett's Coffee House. This is supposed to be a little bit of a peek into Krondor, the setting for what this is. They're based on Raymond Feist's books. Magician is where he started this world, and then the actual book where there's a lot more about Barrett's Coffee House, stuff like that. That's Rise of a Merchant Prince. And so that's where this story's at. And earlier on, I was saying, or I was trying to say, that it's the story that helps you kind of tell where you should go or would be appropriate for what you're building in your diorama. By having a story, whether it's one you already had or one that you're making up yourself, I think that's a great guideline to get you through some of the parts of building a diorama where you're like, oh, I'm not sure exactly what to do here. Well, how would that fit into the story? And that's a big part of the roof that I built this week. So let's take a look at that real quick. We started here by making these levels removable. And I did that by basically building a footprint of the room and sliding another footprint around the outside of it, and then just put these vertical lines or vertical posts in to give it the height that I needed for the room. And it might be better if I just show you. So these are all clipped together, but I'm going to take it apart real quick so I can show you. And they're clipped together because I haven't quite put things together so far as the holders, but they'll come. So I hope that didn't do any damage. I don't know. So here's one level. And basically what I'm saying is I built this outer ring, or whatever you want to call it. It's a sill in construction terms. And this sill, by building two of them and then just putting the height that I want here, it's 4.5 inches. It's not necessarily 1/35th, but I want to do that so I can accommodate different size figures that you're going to want to incorporate into your D&D game or your Warhammer game. Some of the figures are quite large. Some, they're 54 millimeter or something like that. They're pretty small. But the larger demons and stuff like that, if you want to introduce that in here, I wanted to have a big enough floor height to get them in there. Okay. So that, and then making these rings around it and then building 2 of them and then just putting in these verticals allowed me to make these stack. They slide over each other as you stack them together. And we'll see if I can recover this thing and show you. So all it does is it slides right over the top, just like that, and it'll interlock. But when I take it off, the whole level comes off. And then I can have either where I'm like revealing that we're doing something in here, or you could actually play this because the top is going to be open. Well, some of them will be, so that you can play this even on the table. So again, I'm trying to be flexible with it, give it the ability to be actually played, but in a way that's easy to do, like on a kitchen table or a gaming table where you bring in the whole thing. It's all set up. Your DM puts all whatever he wants in it, he or her in it. And then you can go ahead and start your game. And as you lift something off, you reveal it, or you say, okay, now we're going to play in this level, whatever the case may be. I just want that flexibility in here. So I'm going to put these back on. And that's the other thing is, I'm not building these things so lightweight that they can't take a little bit of abuse. They should be able to be worked on, moved, removed, replaced by people in a gaming atmosphere, you know. So I'm trying to build them pretty sturdy. More of that as we go forward, and I'll show you how I'm doing that. So let's take a look at this. So that's one consideration, making removable levels. The second thing is I've got the base, that's the foam base. The base has also got layers and levels within it. So the base has 3 levels. It has that top, which is the streets of Krondor. It has below that, this is actually like a spillway and a sewer system. And then below that, and this is all supposed to be carved out of solid rock because it's a seaside town, I've got like a secretive kind of, it's like a temple or something like that. And that's down here. And I'm going to see if I can lift this off without causing havoc. You see that? There's like a little temple down there. Now, I've cut out and blocked it in, but I haven't really done any detailing in there yet because I want to start with the top and go down. So that's kind of the layout of the diorama. And that's allowing me to think of each level or layer as a different layer for the game, a different layer for the people that will be able to play it. And certainly for constructing the game, you've just got a lot of options. And that was really important. John says Tudor roof and bridge we'll talk about here real quick. But I wanted to get to John's point. John says the separation of levels is great. Could make any lighting FX tricky. Are you planning on lighting? Yeah, and that's a really good point, John. Now, John and I work on a lot of stuff together. John has been a friend of the channel and my friend now too for a long time. And we talk about and conceptualize a lot of stuff. I love the term ideation. You know, it's like a big term now. I thought it was like some new age kind of thing. No, it's like from the 1800s. I'm sorry. I get into words, and ideation is fun. So when we're talking about this kind of stuff and we're kind of conceptualizing what we're going to do, I think it's really fun because John has a great background in special effects and lighting, and he's great with electronics and stuff like that. And I'm trying to use what I understand and what I want to do with lighting as, you know, points of interest and drawing the eye into the scene and stuff like that, and making something that's, you know, obviously inside where there's a lot of shadow, brighten that up so you can see it. You know, you know, it's not always going to be uncovered. And when this is all assembled and maybe not being played, I want it to just sit there and look like a really cool diorama. I don't want to look like it's just this thing in the corner that you're waiting to play some games on, and it's just some whatever. I want it to look like a really cool diorama like I love building. So there's a lot of considerations in doing that. So my progress on this might be a little bit slower, but I'm figuring out these things as I go, and lighting. I am getting back to this, John. Sorry. The lighting is something where I'm okay. Could I have a battery pack on each one? I could. Or when something's removed, I could have a contact point where when it's on, it has light. When it's off, it doesn't. I don't know. These are things to be discussed. But that's one of the fun things about doing these dioramas is the trickier or harder it is, or the newer challenges that you face, to me, are super fun. I've never done what I'm doing right now, though I've got a lot of basic information about doing it. I think that changing it up and finding new challenges and finding new things keeps it really fresh. It keeps it really exciting. And it keeps me trying to figure out new stuff, because that's what I do and I love. That's the thing about creating. I think that a lot of people that create, sure, it's about the end thing, but it's also about the challenge in creating something that you've never seen somebody else do, or you've never done it and you've seen somebody else do it and you don't know how, and so you dive into it so you can figure it out. I think that's a wonderful thing. That's a really, really fun thing about creating. So anyway, I just like going on a tangent, but thank you, John. Yeah, there's going to be lighting. We got to figure that out. We'll talk tonight, hopefully, if you can make it to the live, the group build. And I think that contact points are an idea. Battery packs also an idea. I don't know, but something fun, and a good challenge is going to be neat. Neil is here. Hello, Neil. How's it going, sir? I'm glad that you're on board. And Neil's from the UK. And Neil does 1/6 scale World War I and World War II dioramas. He's also got a channel on YouTube. Gotta see what's doing, and Facebook. Or I'm sorry, do you have one on YouTube, Neil? I'm sorry, I don't know. I know you have an amazing channel on Facebook, and the stuff that Neil does is one of the reasons that when I got heavier into the detailing portion of building a diorama, his realism blew me away. This is like 3 or 4 years ago when I first saw Neil's stuff. And ever since, I've just been super impressed because of the realism. Some of the pictures that I saw, I knew they weren't real, but initially I couldn't tell. And it's a combination of his building, his how you put a scene together, how it's constructed, but also how it's photographed, how it's lit. He puts atmosphere with smoke and all kinds of stuff, different color. Brilliant stuff. Look up Neil Bullard, please. A brilliant, brilliant diorama builder. John says, hi, I'll be researching wireless power now. We need Nicholas Tesla. It would be kind of cool. I've also thought about, I would love to be able to do something like, a Jacob's ladder and stuff. I think we talked about that, Tesla coils and all that kind of stuff in miniature. It's very doable. May not be safe, so I don't know, but someday, because I love doing laboratories, I don't know. I just think they're cool. I've got to do a miniature Tesla coil. I've got to do a Jacob's ladder, where the arcs kind of go up between two contacts and all that kind of stuff. Got to do it someday, but it's not going to be this day. So anyway, but thanks very much, John. Neil, yes, very cool, Neil. On Insta too. So on Insta and on Facebook too. So got to look up Neil's stuff. Is amazing. And I think I was thinking about inspiration this week. Here we go, another tangent. And, to say that you're being inspired by someone is certainly a huge compliment. But it also makes you think in a different way than maybe you thought about the same thing before. I don't know what the heck I'm thinking, but it was just a really fun thought. I was out in the yard, we had a brief moment between rain, and I thought how wonderful to see something that someone else has done, and maybe you're familiar with it, or maybe you know something about it, but you haven't seen the way that they've done it, the level of expertise that they've applied to it, their background and skill that they brought to it that you hadn't seen before, and you're inspired to do something. But it's really your way of thinking changes a little bit. It's just this. Anyway, I just thought it was a wonderful thought experiment. I like to do that kind of stuff, just thinking about stuff and it was a wonderful one. And I thought of Neil. I thought of John, because these are two gentlemen that I've worked with in the past and talked to and seen their stuff, and that's pretty cool. Anyway, so enough about that. Can you just trust the Force, Bill? Absolutely. The Force is wonderful, and I think, well, I'm not going to go too deep into the Force, but I do know that someday the Force is going to be seen very differently. I just think, through reading and stuff like that. Anyway, that's just another completely different subject. But anyway, may the Force be with you. Let's talk more about structure real quick before we go into how I built the roof, because I think the structure is really important. So right here are some examples that I found on Pinterest, and they're wonderful examples because they allow me to kind of see how these things were built, and not just how they were built, but maybe why they were in a certain style that everybody did. I can tell where I can put stuff. I can see where it fits into the stories that I'm reading about this construction. So these are the images that I have floating around in my head. And then as I start to build, I'm thinking about all that kind of stuff that we just talked about so far as trying to make it playable. And so I decided to not have a peaked roof. I wanted a very steep roof. I think it's very attractive, aesthetically pleasing. But I knew that I needed the rooftop, both because of the storyline in the books that I'm following, but also the playability part of it. If I just had a roof, okay, it's a cool looking roof, and I could have something inside of it, a level inside there. But by adding a flat rooftop, and by adding basically this little kick out I will show you here, these eaves that come off, it actually gave me a place for someone to run along the eaves, along the rooftops, and that lends itself to more storytelling. It adds itself to another option for your dungeon master. And that's kind of the thoughts that I have in building all of this. I don't know why I'm eating my words today, but let's take a look again at this, because if you look here, I've got this area up near the top, and somebody conceivably could be running along that. And in the books we're following, that happens. His name is Jimmy the Hand, and there's a whole story about Jimmy the Hand. It's a wonderful story. And he runs along the edges of these rooftops. He moves along what they call in the book the Thieves' Highway, and it's these little kickouts. They're also aesthetically pleasing. It gives me more shadow, which is something that we want to promote in building a model, in building a diorama. One of the things that I think about in lighting, like John mentioned before, is how shadows will be cast on the face of something. Now, as I'm building this, I'm talking about all the inside and playability and blah, blah, blah. But on the outside, it's still got to look like a beautiful Tudor building. And so I have to consider how the light is going to play on it. And having shadows, creating shadows, are how we get detail and depth in anything that we build. So anytime I can add or play with or kind of maneuver with a shadow and light, I need to consider that in the build. And now I'm considering well into the future, of course, but I mean, that's the experience that you gain by doing this kind of stuff. You'll want to add those elements so you get a pleasing look at it. Okay, so back to this. Now once, and I'm going to go back a little bit here, because there was something that I noticed after I put this on here, and it was like, well, I only had a very narrow street here, and I thought that I would have a little bit more room, but that's a little bit too close to the other building. As that eave comes off that building, if another, they're going to touch. So then I thought, well, okay, I have to build this bridge for to go between the buildings. I'm going to have to cut this entire area out and remove that area here so that I can put this bridge through, because there obviously has to be a roof line on the bridge. So this is where it got, really into where, actually understanding construction, or at least timber framing, is helpful. So here I've removed most of it. I've built up the sides of the bridge to give them a little bit of structure. And then I start building the border for the entire level. So this is what we talked about early on. Remember when I took the two apart and it fell over and all that? But this structure, and I'll see if I can highlight this properly. This structure here is the one that we just saw in the picture. And it's an outline, basically, of the base of the roof line. And what that does, it gives me an anchor point for the beams I'm putting in, but it also accommodates the fact that I can lift that entire level off. If I didn't have that, it just would not work as well. You could probably engineer a different way of doing it, but this is the way that I chose, and it's working out great, and I'm very happy about that. So let's go back and look. So I build this little border around what is going to be the bridge, as well as the other building, and then I can start building a roof line for both of them. And so here is the new roof line for just this sliver of a building that's across the street. And I'm looking at, do you see those V's, those inverted V's coming up? Those are going to be the roof line of the actual bridge. And then there it is. I took a lot of video of this, but I didn't take a lot of pictures as I was building it. But that roof line going between the two buildings is really going to accommodate exactly what I need. Now, the trick is trimming it. Now, do you see on the right side here of this picture, the roof line of this new sliver of a building? That roof line extends beyond the side of the pink foam. Well, that pink foam edge is supposed to be a zero edge. In other words, it's supposed to be a slice. And that needs to extend to infinity straight up. So I have to come back and now take, this is a blank, this is like the footprint of the diorama. I put that on top of there. I figure out what the offset is, and then I have to move around. I've got a little spacer that I built for it. I move around. I take my combination square, and I can draw where to cut these offsets, and then trim this thing back so that I have, a nice looking piece that doesn't extend up, from the edges of the diorama. I want to keep everything basically within this border, right? That's that whole thing with a diorama. It's kind of supposed to be cut straight out of the earth, kind of like cutting a cake. You've got that design on top of the cake, you cut that out, boom, that's what we got. Well, that's what we're looking at here when we do a diorama. So I want to extend that as much as possible. Now, I got into a little bit of a trouble on the building, because when I went up to the roof, I continued to step out on each level. So it's like, I don't know, about 1 1/8 over on the left-hand side of the diorama. It's 1 1/8 over the outside of the pink. I don't think that's going to be a big deal. And the reason is, once I get everything kind of configured and I know where everything's going to be, I'll eventually build an outer facade around all of the pink foam that I use as the base structure for everything. And that's something that I typically do with all my dioramas. It allows me to have a covering over that to hide, because this doesn't look all that great. Even if you paint it black and you make it really nice, it can get damaged or whatever. So I put a facade. I use 1/4" MDF, built a facade around it, so it looks really proper. Well, in this one, I think with all the wood and the structure, that'll still be visible, certainly because of how Tudor buildings are. I think it'll look nice with a wooden facade around it. Obviously, the 1/4" MDF is wood, but I would typically paint it black. This one, I think I'll leave wood. Try to make it look medieval. just like the rest of the diorama. So there's a lot of stuff to go before I get there, but that's the long-term plan. And so that's why I don't think this sticking out over the edge is going to be a big deal. I'd have to re-engineer a heck of a lot to try to take those little steps out that make it pass beyond, but I think it'll be okay. So anyway, a little technical there, but I figured I'd share it because that's what we're talking about here. So if anybody has any questions about that process or how to go into it, I'm going to be talking more about that this next week on my shorts, because I do a short, every day. And that's going to be the big focus. How I'm going to go ahead and finish up all these floors, how I'm going to do all that kind of stuff, how I'm eventually going to get to a finished diorama, because once I get this top part done, then I'll start moving down. Okay, so let's go back and look at some pictures. In this area, one of the other things about making this playable, I just want to go back to that a little bit, is you'll see this area right in the middle down here. I at first thought I would do this roof line that kind of follows in and dips in here and then comes back out. But then I thought about our character, Jimmy the Hand. And this is where I'd like to talk about, your story a little bit and how the story influences what you're building in your diorama. And thank you very much, Scott. Scott just typed in down below. Please be sure to like and subscribe, folks. I'm told it helps the channel. Bill has certainly helped us out. Thank you very much, Scott. That's very, very nice of you. And I forget to say it, and I should. But what I'm trying to say here is, when I'm trying to develop this story and make it playable, by having the story to make reference toward, it's easier to find a place like this that both fits the story but will make it playable because the story is guiding me here. Let me explain further. Jimmy the Hand was a child thief in the city of Krondor. And he would go on the rooftops, and those rooftops were called the Thieves' Highway. Again, all this written by Raymond Feist. Well, that element of the story gives me a visual for a few things. Number one, I wanted to have that flat rooftop on the highest peak. But then as I got a little bit lower, I thought, these eaves coming out, there's no windows up there. This little area, see that area between the two buildings and in front of the rooftop that's going to be on the bridge, that little area, that is basically a hidey hole that a thief would use to spy on people down on the street below, like at night. And that's a big part of the story. Again, I'm going back to the story because I really believe a story is so helpful in deciding how you're building your diorama. As I'm going through the entire diorama, I have this running in my head because I've read these books multiple times, and I really love these books, and so I love the world. But it's giving me the ability to add depth to my diorama. Now, I don't care if you have a story in mind or if you create the story. By working on the story, sorry, I got something in my mouth. By working on the story, by adding to the story, if it's your own story, as you build, I think it gives you ideas to help make the diorama better, by including details that you wouldn't think of if it was just kind of, I'm building a building or I'm building a Tudor building. That's a little bit more specific. But now I'm building a Tudor building that there was this thief on and he slipped on tiles. Well, now there's another detail because there's tiles and it's wet and there's maybe moss. You see what I'm saying? By trying to incorporate a story or imagine a story or build upon your own stories you're building, it allows you to see more depth that you can add to your diorama to make it more realistic, because it's coming from a place that you see it, you understand it, you know this in your brain. You've got this image created inside your head, or maybe it's an illustration. That's perfectly fine too, but it gives you the depth. But I think it needs to go beyond a physical picture, because if you're trying to match a picture, You're matching the picture, fine. But what if the picture is missing something? I think if you can imagine yourself in that world, if you can imagine the world at depth to give it this granularity, and I'm not talking about granularity of like visual, but granularity of you can feel grains of sand in your hand. You can feel a rock under your knee as you kneel. If you can find that in how you are interpreting this story and then put that kind of detail in your diorama, I think you're going to blow everybody away. I mean, that's literally what I'm trying to do. I want to build the absolute best diorama I can. And that is one of the reasons, or sorry, not reasons, but that's one of the techniques that I try to employ, and I talk about a lot, frankly, to get that realism, to get people to feel like when they're looking at it, number one, it's engaging and it's fun to look at, and they want to be in there. You know, they want to be in that environment, because that's how I feel about it. And I don't think that if you just look at a picture and try to copy a picture and you don't internalize it and you don't imagine yourself there, I don't think that you can get the realism that you're trying to get out of it. Maybe I'm just repeating myself at this point, but I think I've driven the point home. Really get that story, embellish it, say that as he's walking along, you know, build stories in your mind. As I'm walking along this eve at night, I'm walking along here, I'm trying to sneak along, and then you see somebody walking down below and you don't want them to see you, so you tuck into that area. That kind of thing makes your diorama much more dynamic and real, because somebody's going to recognize that. You know, I mean, putting moss in there and stuff is fantastic, but everybody does that. What would be in that little area right there? You know, again, it's all got tile on it. It's all roofed. It's all done. But what would be in that area if a boy thief, Jimmy the Hand, were up there and said, hey, this is actually a good little spot where I can't be seen from down below. It's a medieval European kind of town. Nobody's flying over. So he's got a little secretive place. What would he stash there? Would there be a cache? Would there be, I don't know, tools of his trade? You know, that kind of realism, I think, only comes from you trying to imagine the story yourself and be in the story and try to then put those elements into your diorama. So that's what I'm thinking of as I'm building this. And that's what I really want to get across. I'm not just thinking I'm building a roof, you know, not. I'm trying to build a gaming surface with a lot of character and with history and all kinds of stuff. So let's look at some more of this. I hope that wasn't too spacey or way out there for anybody. Neil says, I'm sorry, did you get many more followers from the shares? I did. Thank you very much. You know, I just want to mention this. Neil, a while back, about 4 weeks ago, did this like huge thing about one of my posts. And sorry, I'm scratching. And he talked about my stuff. And man, I'm telling you, I've got a whole bunch of people, because he shared some of my stuff on Facebook. Oh my gosh, I've had a flood of new folks come in, and it's really wonderful. And thank you so much, Neil, for that. You know, getting new people in to see what I do is really fun. I mean, it really is. But I think it's when I get to see, because I look at a lot of new people that come in and start watching my stuff. It's really fun to see what they do. You know, that whole thing about inspiration and becoming inspired by seeing something new, by changing your mind a little bit, by just getting new information about something. I've been doing this stuff for a long time. And then I see one image, boom, that's something new. It's just great. I love that. So thank you so much, Neil. That was a lot of fun. And yeah, I really did get a lot of new folks looking at me. And so that was just the coolest thing. So let me look back at this, and I want to talk a couple of more things about this roof line. Not only is the outside of the roof line playable, but the inside is playable. So he's got an attic now. So I think having a little attic, and you build it like an attic, it looks like an attic, it's got attic type stuff in it, I think is awesome. You can move from one building to the next. You're above people. You can have peepholes for down below. You can do all kinds of stuff in an attic. It can be a secret meeting area for a cabal of whatever. You know what I'm saying? That's the kind of stuff that you can add to your diorama to make it more interesting and more playable. So that is what I'm doing. So where are we at with this thing? Next week, I am kind of thinking about, I need to do the bridge supports. I need to do some level supports. And what I mean by level supports are, as I set these on here right now, I'm kind of having to put clamps on them. You saw me doing that earlier, try to keep them from sliding down because they fit perfectly. It's great, but they'll literally slide down one over the other. And so I need to have these little supports. It's also a detail. It's also a generator of a shadow. It's, there's all kinds of things. It could be something where I've got a little gargoyle on it. It could be something where I've got a bird perched on it. I could, all of those things come to mind when I think about being able to add that little detail. So when I list here level supports, it's like, well, no, duh, you're going to put level supports on it, but it's not innocuous, is I guess what I'm trying to get across. Even the level supports that I put on here have to have a certain shape, a certain look. There's going to be a purpose to them. And the purpose should be beyond, I should say, what they physically are doing by holding the level up. They're also a perch point for birds. You know what I'm saying? A boy thief. How would a boy thief get up to the roof from down below? Well, those little level supports could be a handhold for climbing up the side of it. All things like that I'm trying to consider in putting into this diorama so that I can get the most out of it. The windows and doors, another part of the story that drives how I'm going to do it. On other gaming buildings that I've seen, stuff like that, they have windows. Not too many of them have opening windows. And it's not like, ooh, I'm going to do opening windows. No, it's part of the story. And part of the story is Jimmy the Hand in the books. He would come from the rooftop and he would use like a safety pin or a little piece of bent wire, whatever it was, on the end of a string. And he could jimmy open the lock, the little latch on the window, and then open windows. I think that is such an important element to the story and the people that are familiar with the story and love the story like I do, that if I didn't have that, it would almost be, why did he leave that out? So that decision from the story is going to make me make openable windows, probably just on the top level, because the other ones here on this level, that's like a restaurant part thing. So those won't open, but on the level above those, right below the eaves, there could be there will be some windows that physically open. And I think that's neat. Again, the story's influencing. Why do I say it so weird? The story's influencing it. And that's a great part about having the story as it's not a plan, but it's a guide. It's like your map. I can always go back to the story. And if I'm wondering about adding an element, if I'm wondering about if this is going to fit, or you're not even sure what to do, well, how does it relate to the story? And how does it progress the story by having that element in? Or lack of that element doesn't allow the story to progress. That's the other thing. You can predict. Let me backtrack. When I'm doing this diorama, it is a very small part of an entire city called Krondor, right? Remember I talked about that before. It's like cutting a piece of cake out of the cake. This is the piece that you cut out. Well, it's the same thing with the story. I don't have to have the entire story represented here. It's a snapshot. It's a point in time within the story. I'm not telling the entire story of Jimmy the Hand in this. I'm just telling the part of the story here. So think about that too. When I'm trying to think of my story, it doesn't have to end with everything right here. So if I'm trying to build my story to work on, to give me a guide through my diorama. Build beyond your diorama. Build the story, build the narrative, build the idea of the world, of the action, of what took place in the past, what's going to happen in the future. That's a part of the diorama now, right? Even if you're not even going to fully explore it, because that's your background, that's your depth, that's your context. You know, they talk about that in a movie or something like that. You know, I need to get this context through so that everybody has this grounding, this understanding. Well, build that into your story. It really honestly helps you design your diorama so that when you get to those points where you're not exactly sure what to build, or it's like, well, it looks okay, but it doesn't have the detail I want, or it doesn't have the realism I want. Well, go back to your story. And if that part of your story, and I'm really beating this in today, I guess, but if you go back to that story and that element doesn't have something to help you, it's okay. You can build upon that story. You've got a little bit of a world created in your story. Get in that world and then create something that will enhance that area. I do that, and it really honestly helps me figure out what to do next. Have I gone too far with something? That wouldn't be in the story, or that seems ridiculous, or it's out of time. It's not in sync with, where we are in time of the story. All those things can really help in guiding you through the process. So the next stuff I got to work on, besides windows and doors, is cross bracing. I have to get the windows and doors placement before I can do the cross bracing. The cross bracing is so important because of a Tudor building. That's one of the most recognizable parts of it. In between all these areas on the building, that's going to be like plaster and lath and wattle and daub and all that kind of stuff. Well, what's exposed to those beams, so to have the character to really call this a Tudor building, that's one of the aspects that has to be in there. So in doing that, if I do it wrong, it's going to look wrong. You know what I mean? People are going to go, that's kind of looks like a Tudor, but it doesn't. So very, very careful examination needs to go into it to make sure that that's right. The floors are very specific too, and where the floor is going to be so that I can see it, use it, take it apart, and still use it as a gaming piece. Rock work and entrances. Now, this is something that one of my uncle-in-laws asked me this week, and he goes, how are they going to get in there? And it's like, well, of course, they're just going to go in the front doors that I've created right here. There's doors there, but there's this rockery. I've got this little weird thing that I've done that I'm not sure if it's good, because, and I don't know if this is too deep into it, but what happens here is, see, now this is just falling down. So that's what I mean about trying to get this thing so it's not. But when you look at a picture of a Tudor building, let's say this is the bottom floor. The bottom floor goes directly into the foundation, which is like stone, rock, that kind of thing. It's built up. Well, mine is inside that in here. So there's a difference there, that to do it differently and to make it look correct, I've got to get in there and give a reason for it. What I mean there is, if I do something on this that looks dramatically different than what people accept as the norm for that kind of building and foundation and all that kind of stuff, then it's going to, you kind of look at it with a little bit more scrutiny, but not a believability. And I don't want to take that away. I'm asking people to, believe in what this is, see the world in it, see some believability in it. It's not fully, so it looks exactly real, but I'm asking them to do that. And any little thing that detracts from that kind of drops that little veil of believability a little bit lower. So I need to figure out some way to do this. Like I said, maybe that's a little bit too deep into the process, but I do want you to get an idea as to what it takes to design and build a diorama like this, because there's a lot more thought and prep and just sitting back sometimes and just going, man, what the heck now? It's not just this breezy thing. You're not just, I'll just do this and no, there's a lot of contemplation. and that's an enjoyable part of it. It's not a frustrating part either. You know, I can get frustrated sometimes when I'm working on things, but it's a point in which you can step back and look and say, am I going in the right direction? Am I not going in the right direction? And by having that story and by having all that depth and by trying your best to create a realism and not remove that veil of people's belief in what you're doing and what it's supposed to look like. I think the people that can do it, Neil's one that can do it. That's a really neat thing to try and do. It's not easy. It's hard for me to explain, but I really want them to see the pictures of it, looking at it directly, playing as a game, and go, man, that looks real. And because of that, they're inspired and they get ideas. See my whole point? Did I just wrap something up with like start here and then go there and they worked? That'd be cool if I did. Anyway, so that's what I got for you this week, folks. Let's look at a couple more slides. But that's pretty much it. And I really appreciate you coming on board. Next week, or maybe the week after, I don't know. I don't want to put any pressure on John, but John has an idea that he'd like to show some pictures, and he showed me some of it this week, and I was really excited about it. And so we do modeler spotlights, and so I think John Robeck is going to have a modeler spotlight coming up here. Neil has had one. Martin, we haven't done a modeler spotlight on you, sir. I would love to do some of your stuff, and I know where to go get it, but I'd love for you to maybe, show us some of the pictures you want to show. Some of the newer viewers that are on today, if you have not thought about showing some of your work or some of your ideas or whatever you want to do, I would sure love to see it. Modeler Spotlight is something that I really enjoy. And when you do this, please, this is really important. And I feel bad because Christian was on a couple of weeks ago. Great modeler, local guy, wonderful, wonderful modeler. I didn't put up his links is what I wanted. So when you're sending me your information, don't assume that I'll just take the links from it. He gave me the link and I'm going to be supplying that. But send me links to your other sites that you want people to show and see your work on. Please do that. That's so important. I really want to promote other people. Neil did it for me. Neil pushed this thing to like 96 different people. I'm no joke. He sent my stuff to 96 people. I mean, it took him hours. And then for days, I got like updates and people saying thank you and new viewers and all kinds of stuff. I just want to return that favor. It is so wonderful when you find something new and then you're so excited that you say, I got to share this with somebody. And that's what I want to do with your work. So if you do dioramas, if you do miniatures, because I remember I do miniatures, if you're interested even in woodworking, I would love to see some of the things you do. Please include what links that I can share with folks to see more of your work. It's always fun to do that and get your name out there. Let me see. I have another picture here. Hey, there we go. Those are my patrons and my YouTube members. Thank you all so much. And if you haven't seen my Patreon, if you haven't seen that I have a members section on YouTube, I think it would be wonderful if you joined or looked at it at least, because I have other things that I post in those areas. And I'm starting to try and get a little bit more like not daily, but more weekly. I was like posting on Patreon like once a week, or man, I skipped a couple of weeks. I don't want to do that. I want to get you more data, and it'll be a little bit longer video, still handheld shot like my shorts are, but it'll be, horizontal, and it'll be a much further explanation of some of the things that I'm doing here. So that's on Patreon and stuff. So if you're interested in that, you can go. If you're interested in being a modeler on here, I had that information up too. You can go to my Patreon. You don't have to join. It is free. And that's how I can get you on Modeler Spotlight. Contact me through Patreon, and then we'll get you on Modeler Spotlight. Okay. So thank you so much, everybody. Oh, ba. I got to see where I'm at. John said yes, he will. So he's going to be on. And then Homefront Forge, hello, thank you. Homefront Forge is a little bit new, but it's really fun, and I get real nice text during the week and stuff like that. Thank you so much. That's very, very cool if you come on. Martin, I would love to see it because your stuff is so cool. And Martin is a really, really great modeler because Martin goes everywhere. It's not one subject. It's not one thing. Martin is very eclectic and very skilled in all these different types of model he does. So that's wonderful, Martin. I'd love to see some of your stuff on the show. And then Neil says, just sent you a what's up picture of something I started today. Wow, very cool. And that's always fun too. New startups and new things that you're doing. That's always something that I enjoy sharing with folks. That's wonderful. Well, thank you so much, everybody. I really appreciate you coming on. We do this every Friday. I will do a replay of it if you missed any part of it. That is at 4. I mean, I guess you can go onto my channel and watch it live as soon as this is done. But there will be a replay that I post at 4. And I do a short every day at 10 a.m. Sometimes a little late. But that is just like daily progress. So I literally do daily progress on all of my builds now. And it's a lot of fun. And I have a lot of friends like Scott McLeod. He's here every single day. He sees every one of my posts. Man, and we talk about other stuff, and that's wonderful. And I really appreciate that. Thank you so much, folks. I'm just talking for talking, and that ain't what this. If I ain't talking dioramas, I'm just yammering. So see you next week. Thank you very much, Neil. Martin, thank you so much. No, that's boring. I gotcha. But I would love to see everybody shoot some stuff this way so we can have it up. I appreciate everyone. I hope you have a wonderful weekend. And I hope you get some time on the bench. That's always good. Thanks very much. We'll see ya. Bye-bye.